Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Bob Mendelsohn, and this is the Bob's Your Uncle podcast. Today you're going to meet Daniah Greenberg, originally from Manhattan, New York City, whom I caught up with in Florida at a recent conference. Her story is legend, from prison birth to prison rebirth to Bible Society. What is all that about? Stay tuned. You can now find us and comment to us wherever you get your podcasts. Tell us what matters to you, what triggers your joy, what bothers you in the world. Let us know. We'll see where the Spirit leads us. Wherever you are just now, whether you're out for your evening constitutional, or you're here in Australia or back in the United States with friends, or all by yourself with your headset on, hey, wherever you are, thanks for joining us these 18 minutes. Of note, the opinions are strictly my own and those of my guests.
But I do know that I love you, and I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
Today in history, 1975, the former Teamsters president Jimmy Hoffa disappeared in Detroit, Michigan, under mysterious circumstances. In 1956, on the 30th of July, the phrase, "In God We Trust," legally became the national motto of the United States. In 1930, Uruguay defeated Argentina to win the first World Cup in soccer. In 1540, Lutheran clergyman Robert Barnes was burned as a heretic after being used by Cromwell and King Henry VIII to gain European support for their anti-pope movement. And in 1898, on the 30th of July, Otto von Bismarck, as Prime Minister of Prussia, founded the German Empire and served its first chancellor until 1890. He died this day in 1898, and that's today in history. Welcome to the podcast, Daniah Greenberg. So glad you could be with me as we share together. We're in Florida now, but you don't live here, do you? Where's home?
We just moved our whole family to Dallas, Texas.
You didn't grow up there?
No, I did not. I was born in Manhattan in the basement of Bellevue Hospital, believe it or not.
Why would I not believe you?
Because it's an insane asylum, and it's not really where people, it's not the word you want on your birth certificate, but it's an interesting story. My dad was a jazz drummer, and so when he heard about my mother being ready to give birth, they weren't able to get a taxi. A taxi wouldn't pick her up because she was so pregnant walking down the streets of New York. And so the only place she could walk to was Bellevue Hospital. And so I was born in a ward for prison mothers who were losing their babies, and I was the only baby that got to go home with their mom. So I've been worried about kids most of my life.
Oh, that's so great. And you have a couple kids yourself.
I do. I have 3 children. My husband, Mark, and I have 3 kids, Amanda, Joseph, and Simeon. And they all participate now in the Bible Society. Amanda's the new CEO of the organization. And along with her brothers, they are the ones that run the TLV Bible Society.
Your family's well-known in messianic circles, and you want to get more well-known, which is great. Did you grow up messianic? And if not, what changed you?
Okay, so I got saved in and that's an old school world for it. I had an encounter with God in a prison cell. I was raised by a single mom. My father passed of a heroin addiction, and my mother, I was the eldest daughter, which kind of made me the surrogate parent to my brothers. And that journey of just having that kind of heavy responsibility young, when I'm off to college, I lost my mind. I don't know what I was doing. But at some point, I ended up in a jail cell for shoplifting. And it happened after I graduated from college.
What
Put
state
myself
was
through
this?
college. New York State.
Okay.
New York State. And I got picked up right before Christmas. And people had shared the gospel with me before. But you have to hear the gospel 8 times before you're going to even really think about it. You got to keep seeding so people it's a revelation. It's not so much, the decision part comes after the revelation part, at least for me. But the amazing way that I came to a real change of heart, where I discovered the importance of the Torah and living a Jewish lifestyle, was when I got, I'd read this little scripture in this Gideon Bible that I stole from a 7-year-old, believe it or not.
wait.
No, I totally did.
What 7-year-old has a Bible?
The Gideon's Bible. That was like
Okay.
a big deal. They had a little Gideon that they carried around, and this family brought me in, and I didn't stop any of the stuff I was doing on the street. I was go to school by day, and then I was clubbing all night long and not living a healthy lifestyle. So this family took me in. This little girl's Bible was sitting on the counter, and I don't know why. I must have felt really guilty because I just grabbed it, not thinking that was in turn yet another sin.
Did you know it was a Bible?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, but I didn't. So I stuck it in my purse. It's like a security blanket for some people. They just carry it to feel like they're doing better. They don't actually read it. But I read one sentence: Yeshua is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that's when I realized, okay, well, if this is the same God that saved all those people before me, I think maybe I could give it a shot, right?
You're qualified?
Yeah, I thought at some point I qualify for salvation. So when I was when I ended up in the jail cell, I really repented on my face. And I ended up going back to my hometown, and I prayed one prayer. The prayer was, just send somebody to help me. I didn't even care who. I'm like, send somebody, because I'm alone and afraid, and I don't know what to do. And 2 weeks later, I met Mark Greenberg.
Yeah.
I did. I had a job at a telecommunications firm, and his brother was a drag queen. And he wanted me to come over and try on some clothes, and I had nothing else going on, so I was sure. And the next morning, he said, "My brother, he's square. He he's made the symbol in the air that he's a square." He said, "But he'll take us out to breakfast. Don't worry." I met Mark Greenberg within 6 weeks. We were living together and pregnant, and he said to me, "This is great. We'll get married." And I thought, "What are you, nuts?"
Because you didn't want to be
Oh
married.
my gosh, no! I was couch surfing. I didn't even have real places that I lived. I lived 28 places in only 4 years. I don't think that's actually living.
You're running from the law.
Yeah, pretty much is
Yeah.
what I was doing. But when I had that experience where I had just graduated college and I put myself through school, but it was like I didn't know the person I would become at night when I was drinking, when I was cavorting and doing all the things I shouldn't have been doing. But that line in the sand came when I realized I was pregnant. I had already made twice a decision to terminate a pregnancy. So this time, because I had accepted the Lord in the jail, I said, "Listen, if you get me out of the cell, I'll follow you." I didn't exactly know what that meant.
So that was your first real prayer?
Yeah, that was my
after-
first real, that was the first time I was like, okay, I'm done.
That's-
Yeah. And
Was
2 months
that
later,
because of that one Bible verse, God's the same yesterday,
100%.
today, and forever?
100%.
So your prayer wasn't, "Thou, O God, art the glory in the heavens." You were just talking to God like he's listening.
Yeah, I still talk to him that way. I really honestly
Does he
believe.
listen that way?
Yes, 100%.
So he can listen to whatever language we speak.
100%.
And he's not put off by raw language.
No, I actually think that he appreciates our honesty. I think that when we hide from God and we use fancy and pretty language, sometimes we're not always willing to recognize that the only way for the veil to come down between us and God is we have to turn toward him. Righteousness is about walking toward him instead of walking away. And every last thing in creation comes down to a binary choice. You're going to walk with God or against him. And we don't always make those choices in the know.
So you prayed this prayer.
Yeah.
You're 6 weeks or whatever pregnant.
Yes.
And now you're saying, you're the boss.
Well, basically I said, what the heck am I going to do now? Because I'm with this Jewish guy who's the sweetest man on the planet, and I had dated nothing but losers. And he wants to get married, and we couldn't find anybody to marry us. Because back then, I was considered Christian because I was started off Catholic, but I didn't know until I was in my 40s that my Italian grandmother, who gave me my first Bible when I was a child, she was a Jewish descendant that escaped the Inquisition. They were from Napoli, went through Argentina before they came to America, but they were actually Jewish.
Some serious historicity. So here you are, you're praying, you're reading, you've got a Bible you stole from a 7-year-old
Yes.
in your purse still. Mark and you want to get married, but you can't find anybody to marry you.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that he didn't have the faith that I had.
He
was
wasn't
a
religious.
conservative Jew. Yeah, he didn't even get his bar mitzvah. But what happened with Mark was he was so nuts about me. I mean, I had flaming red hair. I wore 4-inch heels. It was nuts.
I think I saw that movie.
Well, that would be true. So what happened with Mark was we needed to find somebody to marry us, and when we were trying to get somebody to do an interfaith marriage is what they called it. The Orthodox rabbi in town would only do it for $500. And 35 years ago, that made my husband furious. Because he's like, why are they charging us? Right, we're just as in love as everybody else. What's their problem? So we needed to find somebody to marry us. And someone at my job said they knew a rabbi that believed in Jesus. And it was Jonathan Bernis.
And that was in Rochester,
Yes,
New York?
Rochester, New York. So that was my hometown after we moved from New York. So when I went back there and we went to visit Jonathan, the very first night we walked into this Messianic synagogue, he says to my husband, he read Isaiah 53 to him. I don't even know the scripture exists right on the planet. And he reads it to Mark, and then he says, so does that sound like that could be, Messiah, that could be Jesus? And he went, he actually, I loved his testimony because he would always say it felt he heard the voice of Tevye in his head. And he said, well, they're not making you sign anything. It's not like you don't have to sign, but maybe you could at least. So he, of course, wants to marry me. So he says, yeah, I could think that. And then he went on a 2-year journey trying to disprove.
So Mark's himself trying to sort this out. You're trying to sort it out.
Yes.
You're trying to sort out marriage itself. Well, fast forward if you can. You got married.
Yes.
And you lived happily ever after.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. We got kicked out of his parents' house for believing in Yeshua. We started a Messianic congregation. We've been working in the ministry for probably 35 years now. He was an electrical engineer in nuclear power and a fantastic father, a wonderful husband. Where did he get his
degrees?
RIT.
Okay.
RIT. He got a fantastic degree. He was a brilliant man, my husband.
This story is so good. I'm going to stop it right here. There is another whole episode with Daniah Greenberg, hearing about Mark, hearing about what happened to Mark even last year, how how these kids have stepped up to the plate and are taking the business and the Bible and God in effect. It's just a beautiful family. I wish you could all know them one by one. They're just awesome. I'm going to let you ponder this story that Daniah's been telling us, and it's amazing, isn't it? And we're going to ponder that and then come back next Tuesday and hear more from her. What do you think about all this? Why don't you write me, bobmendo@aol.com, or comment on an Instagram or TikTok to me. I'd love to know what you're thinking. Every week we read from the #1 bestseller of all time. That's the Bible. And of course, I've already spoken a bit about that today, but I thought I'd read this verse from the Newer Testament. This from the Tree of Life Bible. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it shall be opened. As I've already told you, next Tuesday we'll hear part 2 of Daniah Greenberg's story after story after story. It's going to be great. I hope you get to meet some of the family in person one day. You'll be blown away. And then after next week, we'll have Michelle Beadle, who's now moved from Louisiana up to Connecticut. It's going to be another great interview, also recorded at that Messianic Jewish conference held in Orlando, Florida. If this whole business of Messianic Jewish is new to you, write to me and say, tell me more about this. I want to help explain that to you. We're Jewish people who believe Jesus is the Messiah. That's what Messianic Jews are supposed to be. We're focused on him, Yeshua, we call him, and want everybody everywhere to encounter him. That doesn't mean everyone I interview here on the podcast are necessarily Jewish or necessarily believers in Yeshua. This is a podcast of people talking to people. I want you to get to know people in all circumstances of life, in Turkey, in Portugal, in Argentina, wherever I travel. I want you to get to meet them. Next week, I'll be, in the course of the next few days, I'll be in Houston, Texas, and I'll be in Kansas City. And I'll take this traveling microphone with me, and let's see how I can keep introducing you to good folk out there so that you have a better perspective on the world and even yourself. It's not a bad thing. Until next week, then, when things seem bleak or uncertain, look up to God. He's in his heaven. And Bob's your uncle. Shalom.